Passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, and welcome back to another Franchise Euphoria tip of the day. Thrilled to be here again. And I'm going to start off this week's tip by reading off a few more ratings and reviews from iTunes. Let's see, this is by KPFCA, and this says, informative and educational, 5 stars, great information on a topic that many are interested in learning more about. Keep up the good work. Thank you. And it looks like it's Kimberly Falker. So thank you, Kimberly. Got another review by a former franchisee, and this is DJKHNI. As a former franchisee, it's so important to educate yourself about franchises. Josh is doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you for that comment. Really, really appreciate it. Let's see, one more. This is by SFBAYP. Says, excellent resource, 5 stars. Josh conducts great interviews. It's a very polished podcast. I particularly like the mix of the brief episodes providing tips along with the lengthier, high-profile interviews. Very nicely done. Highly recommended. Well, thank you for that. That really means a lot. So now into our quick tip of the day. We're going to talk about how you take your hobby and turn it into a business. Now, I know this doesn't directly relate to a franchisee or a franchisor, but so many people take their hobbies, turn them into businesses, and then realize that they can scale and grow those businesses through a franchise or franchise-like model. But it's so key in doing that you get started off on the right foot. I mean, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and startup entrepreneurs that are creatives by nature, and I love that. I mean, I love working with people who are passionate about what they do. There's just simply no substitute for them. They're fun to work with. They're energized. They're enthusiastic. And so I love that. And most creative entrepreneurs that I've worked with all have a great amount of passion. But so many of them don't really focus on how do you turn that hobby into a business. Well, once they realize that, wow, I've really got this skill, this expertise in doing something, and now I can turn it into a viable business. And perhaps most importantly, now I want to turn it into a viable business. That's when I love to work with them, because now they've realized, okay, now they want to leverage their expertise and help even more people by doing what they do, putting it out there to the world. And what a great thing to do. But again, if you don't do it the right way, it can be frustrating, because anytime you go from just doing something as a hobby where you're not really concerned whether you're making any money to now turning it into a business, well, now you've got to do certain things to make sure that you're profitable. So here are 4 immediate steps that you can do to turn your hobby into a business. Number 1, limit and focus. So a lot of creative people, even if they have a particular hobby, there's a lot that goes into the hobby, and maybe it's a little bit generalized, or maybe it encompasses doing a lot of different things depending on what people ask them to do. But it's so important when you're going to turn your hobby into a business to figure out, what is it about your hobby that you really love? What is the one thing that if you had to get rid of everything else, you would say, I absolutely love this about what I do? That's what I'm talking about when I say limit and focus. That's how focused you need to be. You need to identify what exactly it is. And then you can start to figure out how to leverage that and turn that into a business. Number 2, once you've limited and focused, now you've got to write it down. Now you've got to write down and outline a step-by-step account of what it is that goes in to doing your hobby. Whether you're making golf clubs, whether you're making hunting equipment. I don't know. It runs the gamut for any kind of hobby, whether you're making any kind of arts and crafts devices. You need to have a step-by-step outline of what it is you do. There's actually a great program out there called Sweet Process. It's sweetprocess.com. This is not an affiliate. I don't get anything for recommending them, but I use them myself to write down processes. And it's really cool because you not only can keep track of your step-by-step process for doing things, but you can put on screenshots and pictures and all sorts of stuff to make it real easy to follow. But you really have to write it down. It's not really the sexy part of turning your hobby into a business, but it's so necessary. And trust me, once you take the time to write down step-by-step what you're doing, review it, plug in the holes, you'll start figuring out, what about this? I forgot to add this in. Go back, plug it in. It's such a great process to go to. It really gets you crystal clear on what it is you're actually doing. Number 3, what is your value proposition? In other words, it's great to have a hobby. It's great to create art. It's great to create work. But what is it and what does it mean to people? In other words, what is somebody else going to find value in? You must understand that before you turn your hobby into a business. And doing so will identify who your target market is. If you know what your value proposition is, if you know who this is targeted for, in other words, if you know that, wow, this is what I do and these are the type of people who would be interested in it, well, you've just identified your target market. Number 4, you really need to come up with a launch strategy. So after you've limited and focused what you're doing, after you write it down, after you have a clear understanding of your value, of your why should somebody care? Why should somebody pay for what you are doing? Then you need to figure out, how am I going to launch this thing? Most people who want to turn their hobbies into a business really want to bootstrap it. And I think that's great. I think that's fine. But in order to bootstrap it the smart way, you need to have a launch strategy and figure out, is this the type of product where you're going to leverage the online space to sell it? Do you need to build out a website? Do you need to build out an e-commerce site that's a part of your website? Is this a visual type product? Do you need to be considering, social media sites? Do you need such as Pinterest? And maybe if it's more picture based, you'd want to look at Pinterest and Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and all of them. You just really need to map that out. And here's the thing, you may not be able to do all that yourself, but there's a lot of information online and there's a lot of people who you can turn to who will give you pointers for that, and it shouldn't cost that much. I think one of the important things about a launch strategy is that it can be very, very easy to think that you have to launch everywhere at the same time. And I know some people have had great success with that. I just firmly believe that you should try to figure out what's going to be the best place for you to launch. In other words, if you're selling something, maybe you create golf clubs, right? And you want to provide discount golf clubs that are homemade and that are really fine-tuned. Well, that's something that somebody's going to want to see a picture of, And so you're going to want to think in terms of, okay, if people want to see a picture of this, where would they go to see pictures? Well, you're going to want to utilize, that's going to be part of your strategy in figuring out, okay, how am I going to launch this? Obviously, I'm going to have to put together a website. I'm going to have videos and pictures, and what social media site is going to be best for this kind of a thing. That's the kind of exercise that I'm talking about going through when you're coming up with a launch strategy. But I want you to understand that all of these steps really, if you're focused and you're intent on turning your hobby into a business, really by following these 4 steps, you can take it there. In terms of setting up the business and doing those sorts of things, absolutely, you will still need to do that, and that comes later. But before you actually do that, you really, really need to get focused. You need to write it down. You need to have the clear value that you are going to be providing, and you need to have your launch strategy figured out. If you don't have those 4 things figured out, you're going to be spinning your wheels and you're going to be wasting a lot of time, energy, and probably money on things that you otherwise shouldn't be because you're not clear in what you're doing. I know when I started my law practice, I was not clear on a lot of the technology and stuff that I was using. I was of the mindset that I'm just going to try a bunch of stuff. And I mean, it's been great because I've learned how to use a lot of different technologies, but man, I've spent a lot of time on a lot of things that just really did not pan out. So there's that learning curve that you can really avoid if you take the time to really map out your strategy, because quite frankly, all of the tools may not be necessary or maybe things that you can add down the road. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have questions or thoughts, feel free to email me, josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Till next time, happy franchising.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.